What's up, everybody? It's Connor Tuck with Keller Williams here, and we are going to be doing a quick interview today. So I realized that in New Jersey, there is a migration happening with people moving from one part of the state to another, and it has to do with a lot of the pricing, but it has to do with a lot of other reasons today. So with me, I have Caroline Garguilo out of the Toms River area of New Jersey, and she covers a much broader area than that. I'm going to let her explain that. But we want to talk a little bit about the differences of real estate and lifestyle where she lives there, kind of central Jersey, a little bit more near the East Coast, kind of what the shore towns offer versus if you're going to come a little bit more west in the state and kind of on the South Jersey side, where you're dealing with kind of the outside of the Philadelphia area. So I'm going to go ahead and let Caroline introduce herself.
Hey everyone, thank you so much, Connor, for having me on here. I'm Caroline Garguilo. I'm located on the Jersey Shore. I cover Monmouth and Ocean County, and I'm excited here to share a little bit about what we're looking to do in this segment.
So I'm already going to start off by apologizing. I butchered your last name, and I will get that better going forward. I've only ever seen it written, so this was my first learning experience there. So
I love that you just went all fire for it, though. You didn't even stumble. I was like, yes, look at that. Not going to correct him.
So let's jump into our first topic. And I think it's the big one because it's driving the majority of the conversation around why would you move from one area to the state and another? And it's the cost of living and housing affordability. So Caroline, I'm going to let you kind of start. Give me a broad stroke of what is the main types of inventory and also the areas that you're going to be in. Like, just give me a breakdown of where you're at roughly with all these and just the main type of inventory that you see and you represent as an agent.
Yeah, so in the Jersey Shore area, there's very low inventory, but that's going to be looking like, you know, your $1 million houses along the Jersey Shore. But as you get closer inland, you start to see a little bit more land and a lot more affordability. As you head a little bit north into Monmouth County, it's going to be a little bit more expensive. Inventory is way less. Homes are flying off the market, much more so than Ocean County. And along the Jersey Shore, it kind of takes a little bit for the houses to fly off because of the price point. But the same thing, if it's priced right, it should go pretty quickly.
Do you see the main difference between that? Let's address that speed for a second there. So the speed of the Monmouth listings are going a little bit quicker than we'll call it like the Ocean County shore properties. I mean, I would have to imagine the shore properties, because it is a vacation more, entity, there's just not this constant demand for those homes. Whereas Monmouth, I would assume, is a little bit more of a standardized residential type. Is that the main difference, or is it really just you're getting these mega price points and that's why it's slow? So just talk me through kind of, is it really just a shore vacation thing versus traditional suburban, or is it more price point?
I think that you hit it spot on. I think it's more so it's a second home for people. And so it's not their primary residence where, North Jersey would be their primary residence and they're moving to the Jersey Shore. But also the price points along the Jersey Shore offer a smaller buyer pool because you're looking at $3-4 million homes and there's not a lot of people that can afford that. Although, you are seeing lately that go up, but yeah.
How do you explain the difference to a buyer? Like, let's say they're saying, hey, we want to be in that general area. We're okay with Monmouth and Ocean County. We'd be okay with moving into one of the shore towns if that really hit our need. What is the conversation like where you start to tell them, like, okay, well, here's where your dollar is going to stretch a little bit more. Here's where you're going to get more of a lifestyle component. Like, how would you encourage a buyer if they're considering both of those areas? Like, what would be the couple main questions you'd want to ask that buyer to determine, like, okay, it sounds like from what you're telling me, you're going to be a little bit more happy in Monmouth County in kind of more this, or you're based on these questions that I'm going to ask you, you're going to be a little more comfortable in kind of that more land open Ocean County. Like, what are those questions that you ask to try and pull that difference apart?
Yeah, I think job is a really important component of this, because if they want to be closer to New York City and they're not hybrid and they have to be there every day, they're going to want to live as close to northern Monmouth County as possible. Whereas somebody that has the luxury of staying at home and not having to go into the office so much, they're going to be like, you know what, for me, I'd rather have a view of a lake or the ocean. So that's more important to me when I'm drinking my coffee and doing some work on the computer versus I have to be close to a train station. I need to be close to the bus. bus to get into the city or northern parts of New Jersey, or even Jersey City or Hoboken. So I think that's probably the first and foremost, obviously, question that I ask. But aside from that is even family lifestyle too. Like, how do they want to raise a family? Do they want to raise a family with a backyard in a blue ribbon school district? That's more so Monmouth County. Ocean County does have wonderful school districts, but it's not as well known as the Monmouth County School District. So those would be the two biggest factors in questions when I meet a buyer. And then also sometimes it just takes them going to look to realize, like, okay, this is not what I was looking for. I think I want to relocate to a different area. So if we don't get those questions answered on a first meeting at our buyer consult, then, our first round of homes is really where it's going to nail things down.
So those first two, job and school, right? I think, I don't care where you live. I think that's going to be a driving factor. And you're right. We talk about it, in this kind of the outside of the Philadelphia area. Okay, I want to have access to, and here are like the roadways. I'm going to ask you roadways for a second, because we talk about these all the time, right? They want to be near the bridges to get to Philadelphia is one. That's one kind of like proximity radius we get. I need to be able to get on 295 quickly, right? Or the turnpike. 295 or the turnpike are like two big ones for us. And then another one is sometimes we have people who, if they are going to be traveling into Philadelphia, yeah, it's the bridges, but it might also be what we have down here called the PATCO, which is the train to get into Philadelphia, which kind of runs into the Camden County and a little touch of Gloucester County. So in your area there, as you're starting to kind of look at those two things, and I guess it would be more focusing on like the New York workers that do have to get in there pretty regularly. What are those maybe roads or train areas that you talk about? Like, okay, if you need to have access, you're going to want to be within a 10-15 minute drive of this road or this. What are those roads and trains, those main commute paths for you?
Yeah, that's awesome. I pretty much live on the Garden State Parkway. I get on at exit 80 and I'm zipping up and down it anywhere between, 130 and 62. So the Garden State Parkway is the number one thing where if somebody's looking to commute, that's our major hub over here. And if you're looking to go to, New York City, there's the train station that can be reached in a lot of the Monmouth County areas. They can also be reached along the shoreline in Point Pleasant and Asbury, but predominantly we're talking the Garden State Parkway, and that'll lead you all the way into 287, I-95, which gets you to the airport. And so that's our major highway over here.
Which airport? LaGuardia?
Actually, Newark.
Oh, right. Yeah. Newark Airport.
I'll take you to Newark first, then there's LaGuardia, and then there's JFK as well. So that is the main way to get there. We also have, I-95 that takes you right to the Jersey Shore. So that's one that I'm on frequently. But for our clients that are looking to have to commute into the city, you're going to want to be close to, the bus and also the train station.
Okay. So the Parkway, yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because obviously as I go down the shore, even to the southern New Jersey shores, the Parkway is the main corridor going up that entire eastern part of the state, off the water a little bit, where you're getting north and south. Okay. And then really for us, again, on the Philly side of things, it's 295, the turnpike are the two that you want to be pretty close to. As you get into more southern New Jersey, it kind of spiders out as you hit like the Camden Philly turn. It like spiders out, and you have a couple roads there. I could go into those in more detail, but they're a little bit more secondary and things like that. So let's jump to still keeping in the vein of a real estate conversation, but let's kind of shift the conversation here. So let's talk about property size and lot space. Now, you kind of teed it off where Monmouth is going to be a little bit more of that commuter. You're going to have more established development, sometimes those school districts, and they will offer a certain type of housing. And then you go to the ocean counties, which might be a little, like you said, there might be some more land just outside of it. But then when you get to the shore towns, it's quite densely populated on the shore towns themselves. So just if you have a client, right, and they're considering, hey, property size is or isn't important to us, how do you sort of help them discover, okay, well, based on what you're going to want out of the property itself, I am going to recommend a little bit more Monmouth versus, oh, you're telling me X, Y, and Z. Okay, I see that ocean and this more open land might be more for you. Like, walk me through kind of that decision matrix.
Yeah. So if you're looking along the coastlines, you're gonna find yourself, just like you say, densely populated because everyone wants a slice of the Jersey Shore. I guess if they're looking for their kids to have that beach lifestyle, like ride your bike around town, no one's going to run your kid over. It's safe. It's a beach community. That's what you're getting there versus somebody who maybe wants a little bit of space in a backyard. Being close to a lot of the different major highways also gets you in the Monmouth County area. But then there are some towns like in Ocean County where are really, really densely populated as well. If you go into Beechwood, the houses are one on top of the other and there's no sidewalks, but it's a great town to live in. The biggest lot size is typically like 80 by 100. So everyone's just, on top of one another, but that's a lifestyle where the family wants their kids to play with other kids all the time, riding bikes. They want to be walking distance to schools. So it kind of really depends on how they want to raise their kids. If they don't want to have kids, there's always towns like Asbury that, you could have your dog and your partner and you could just be walking around town, be close to the shore, lots of restaurants to choose from. It gives you like a little slice of New York City. But yeah, there's a town for everybody around here, which is kind of cool.
Yeah. And I kind of want to balance this back with our first thing about kind of cost of living and housing affordability. And I'm going to try and take the natural juxtaposition of, what you explained there. And then let's kind of bring this to the Burlington, Camden, Gloucester County sections of things. And you're right. I mean, obviously there's exceptions to all of this stuff, right? We're going to have really densely and very sparsely occupied towns in both of these areas, right? But we're starting to hammer on, what is most common. And I would say for, especially Burlington, Camden, and Gloucester County, I take Burlington County and Gloucester County similarly, and then Camden County for us is the slightly more densely populated. And it makes sense, right? You come over the bridges from Philadelphia, the Walt Whitman and the Ben Franklin are the two primary that dump you off. They dump you off right into kind of the heart of Camden, Cherry Hill, right? A lot of people in New Jersey, if you're looking at Cherry Hill, becomes this kind of unofficial epicenter of South Jersey. And it is quite densely populated there. It is quite built out, right? I have people that approach me like, hey, we'd love to do new construction in Cherry Hill. I said, great. Which home do you want to tear down? We don't have these swaths of land that you can go and just like pick a corner here. Most of the buildable, attractive lots in these three counties have been built on or they've been preserved. And when you look at it from a map, you look at let's take Gloucester County, for example, and then that also goes into kind of Salem County. When you look at this thing on the map, it looks like open farmland. And you're like, great. Look at all this area that we could develop and buy a house and build new construction. And while there is some truth to that, people have to remember that there has been an incredible amount of land preserved in New Jersey because of the overbuilding and the overpopulation. So Burlington County, this kind of area, like you have the military base there. In between the military base and like Trenton, if you look in that area, Columbus, Mansfield, things like that, it's also open farm space, very similar to that southern Gloucester and Salem County. But again, heavily preserved areas. And people are like, oh, well, we could find something cheap there. Like, no, you really aren't starting there until you're at 400,000 or above, because when you're buying that home, you're also probably buying 2 acres of land with it. So that can be a little prohibitive. Whereas Camden County, the Cherry Hills, Voorhees, the White Horse Pike, some of these areas, this is congested living. This is, a quarter acre is pretty much a standard. There are, of course, going to be some areas where you can get a little bit more than that. And then the more you pull away from Philadelphia and go towards a little bit more central part of the state, start hitting the Pine Barrens, that's when you can, again, the Tabernacles, Chamongs, Medfords, that's when it's going to open back up again, become a little bit more green, become a little bit more wooded and lush and things like that. So that's kind of our lot sizes. Burlington, Gloucester, you're going to get a little bit more land. Camden, it's going to be a little bit more shrunk, but you'll have a little bit better of that accessibility. Can we come back to the cost of living thing a little bit?
Yeah.
What is going to be like a rough price point for you that's like your average or median price point in Monmouth versus average median price point in Ocean? And I know this, we could run stats and do it all that way, but just your experience, best interpretation, like, all right, if you're going to be roughly in this range, Monmouth is kind of be fitting for you. If you're going to be in Ocean, this might be better for you. Or how do you have that conversation pricing between the two counties?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the Monmouth County Ocean MLS just reported that the median house range in Ocean County is roughly $450, whereas in Monmouth County, it's $550. So it jumps $100,000 as you move up north. And then while we're on the topic of pricing, also your taxes go up as you start heading up the parkway. You're looking at an average, tax in Ocean County of probably like 7,000. And then you start heading up and you're in your double digits, you're at 12,000. So again, that's probably because of the blue ribbon school districts, but that's the difference between Ocean and Monmouth County right now.
Wow, so you really are getting from Ocean into Monmouth. Yeah, you're getting 100K more in that median price point, but you're also adding an extra $3, $4, $5,000 into the average again, average. But you're really adding from a price standpoint and from the tax standpoint. That's bringing a lot of that cost and that affordability up because, right, we have to take our principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, so that starts to go up. Let me ask you on that payment right there, because we talked about property values, the taxes, but another big component, and has been a kind of hot topic in real estate in 2024 in New Jersey, is insurance. And I know a lot, especially in our area, flood insurance has increased dramatically throughout the whole state. A lot of property insurance has increased along the state. And I would imagine, tell me if I'm right or wrong here in this assumption, I would imagine that the shore properties have been probably negatively affected by the increase in the insurance rates, maybe more so than maybe traditional Monmouth would be. Do you find that to be true?
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's harder to get flood insurance along the Jersey Shore. Everything that happened in Florida, some of those things happened with us post Hurricane Sandy. I personally own a property along the Jersey Shore, and yeah, it was tough to get the flood insurance, but it was also pricey and something that you really have to factor in when looking for a home. And that's probably one of the first questions buyers ask is like, is this in a flood zone? And so knowing the flood map is pretty important over here.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. And I have been more, that's come up more. I would say, in my normal course of business, there's 1,000 questions to ask in real estate. And given your area, there's probably going to be 20 that gets asked over and over and over again, right? So in our area, insurance doesn't come up all that much, but I'm starting to see it creep up a little bit, especially because we obviously have the Delaware River. And surprisingly, a lot of the towns right along the Delaware actually don't have a lot of flood insurance. There's just little pockets, but where they are pockets is like where the Rancocas River comes in near Willingboro, these tidal rivers that come off the Delaware and have much lower kind of elevation barriers between them and the houses. I can see flood insurance going all the way into South Jersey just because it's off one of these tidal rivers. So it's been coming up more. So, all right. So as we think about the cost and the affordability, the lot size and kind of what you're going to get for that, Monmouth is more expensive. Ocean is going to be a little less expensive on the average and median, but Ocean still has some of those mega millions ones too, because you're getting the shore houses, but Monmouth has its own mega millions. So some of that cancels out.
True. And then you also have to factor in the Jersey Shore runs from Ocean and Monmouth County. So if you cut that area in half and you're looking at the side closest to the shore, it's an anomaly. It's totally different. It runs in a different category. Whereas the towns more inland, that's where we're seeing the 450 to 550 median house range.
So it's hard, and same here, right? It's hard to just take the county and do a lump. Okay, everything in here is going to be that, because you have the gambit of mega millions, and then you still probably have your 200,000 and under condos, smaller homes, 2-bed ones, things like that you'll be able to.
Well, maybe not 200 over here. Maybe we start at like 300.
Okay, so that becomes a big difference too. And this is why, I think as you start to consider both your primary residence, but also potentially investment properties. And that's where, the average investor, especially when they're going for their first property, they're probably going to be 300 and under. They're probably going to be 250 to 300 under for their first property if they want to pick up a duplex or something like that, or if they want to pick up. But, I've seen it just initially. I have seen some investors coming from North Jersey to South Jersey because they're like, hey, I can't play in this sandbox anymore, because even a modest cash flowing investment property, I'm up at this 400 to 500 range for an investment property. So have you seen that too? It's not just a primary home consideration for these. It's also the lower end bracket of all these homes the floor has been brought up on all homes, right? Investment and primaries.
Absolutely. And there were towns that people wouldn't have even thought of buying in. But now, because the homes were, maybe 6 months ago at 250, they were like running to go get those. And now actually the demographics of those towns have changed tremendously, and they're on the up and up. So, when I have a buyer that's like, oh, I'm looking for something 250 or under, we're looking at South Jersey at that point, probably out of my jurisdiction, because there isn't very many homes that are affordable for first-time home buyers around here.
So you think about, because I have a similar conversation, and when people tell me they want something under 150, I'm telling them, hey, that's probably not going to happen on the New Jersey side. Now, if you want to go into Philadelphia and you want to consider looking at some things in Northeast Philly, some of those areas, we could maybe have that happen. But yeah, 150 has sort of become my floor around here. So you're saying about 250 is almost the floor for the Monmouth Oceans.
Yeah. And even, 55 and older communities used to be very affordable around here. And right around the corner from me, used to be able to go to Holiday City and get something for 200,000. And now those homes are selling for 400,000. So even for the 55 and older community, there's been an exodus to Florida because it's become less affordable here.
That happened. And it's funny. What did you say it was called? Holiday City?
Yeah.
So we have a development down by us called Holiday Village, a 55 and older. There's Holiday Village and Holiday Village East. One is the single family homes. One is kind of the condos. And I just showed a second floor 55 and older condo, which is no more than like a 2-bed, 2-bath. You have little exterior stair to walk up to it. And it was listed at like 270. And those used to be an affordable 175, 200, 2.25. And it's just really ramped up. And I'm looking, and this gentleman that I met, he's in his 70s and it's a second floor unit. And he's like, this is going to sort of be the last thing that I hopefully buy. I just don't know if I can do the second floor unit. And it's 30,000 over my budget, $20,000 over my budget. So he also had to take a step back and reconsider. Yeah, I'd love to be in this 55 and older here, but I'm kind of getting priced out of paradise a little bit.
Yeah. And I don't know if this is the same case for you, but the list price here is like the bare bottom minimum starting point. And houses, at least in Ocean County, will most likely, especially if it's a ranch, because ranches are a hot commodity right now because builders really haven't been building them since the 70s. So over here, it's like, yeah, if a home's listed for 300,000, it's probably going for 350 in Ocean County. And if it's listed in Monmouth County at 400, it's probably going closer to 500. So there's a big jump there too, that, they might have a price point, but you might have to be showing them houses a little under the price point because of where we're going with this market and low inventory.
Have you been having similar conversations? Like, let's say you meet with a new buyer and they say, hey, I'm approved up to 500,000. And then you say, all right, well, we're going to set your search. It seems, especially given what you just said there, and it's similarly true to us, I would say the amount we have to go over that list or fair market is not quite as much, but a lot of it is the extra terms you add in. I think that's similar. I think a lot of people are feeling that. Do you make sure that you set their search if they're pre-approved up to 500? In a similar situation, I'd say, hey, I'm really only going to set the max of your search 450 to 475, because if you find that 449 house and you really like it, and it's a well-marketed home with great photos, with great interior condition, it's in the right area, it's in the right school district, it's in the right zip code, we are probably going to have to go to 475 to 480 to 495 potentially to get this home. So are you having a similar, because again, we're kind of coaching around that same thing with our clients here. Do you have that similar setup in searches for bringing the search a little bit under the pre-approval, knowing that you're going to have to go over asking?
Yeah, absolutely. We have to do that just because we don't want the clients to be falling in love with what they can't afford. And so we want to set the expectations right out of the gate. And so in order to help them, it's like, yeah, we need to have these conversations. And sometimes they're like, oh, wait, well, maybe I'd rather live paycheck to paycheck and be house poor to get a better home. And everybody, like, not everybody, but some of the other people are like, you know what? Actually, thank you for thinking about that, because no, we don't want to live paycheck to paycheck. We want to live a comfortable lifestyle, and we appreciate you setting our expectations at this point. So I definitely am having those same conversations with my clients.
I think that also depends on the chapter of life that they're in, right? Are they a first-time buyer trying to save up some money, because they're still paying student loans? All right, let's probably not go for the house poor option. But when you start going into your first move up and then potentially into growing family moves, that might be a consideration where you say, hey, because we have the children and we want to be in the school district and we're going to kind of max our budget out so that we can get the lifestyle we want while we're in this chapter of life, because it's a school district something, maybe they're more tolerant to maximizing the budget and maximizing everything in that period. And then they recognize, hey, okay, now once the kids are through, they're through maybe high school and things like that, then we can do our first downsize and get back out of that a bit more expensive, get into a more fiscally responsive setup and things like that. So I think, where they are chapter of life is important. And I want to segue that into kind of the last part of what I want to chat here for this discussion. And let's talk a little bit about, outdoor recreation versus some urban convenience. For me, and I'll just kind of go first here. The South Jersey area has a little bit of everything, as most counties do. But where we differ is that when we talk about the city, we talk about Philly. And a lot of times when y'all will talk about the city, you're going to talk about New York or potentially, AC as well. That's another point of it. So for us, a lot of the people in South Jersey, if you want this kind of blended lifestyle, right, you want to have, hey, I want my suburban home. So you're going to live in that Burlington, maybe the eastern Camden County, maybe the Gloucester County to have that suburban feel. And then you want to make sure, hey, at least I can get to Philly within half an hour. And if we want to go to the Kimmel Center, we want to go shopping, we want to go to Reading Terminal Market, we want to go see an Eagles game, all those things within a half hour. That's kind of the blend that you go for here. And then we can get down the shore in an hour and 10 minutes, hour and 15 minutes, something like that. So that's generally how we kind of explain, the blend of life that you're going to have here. How do you have that similar conversation when talking about like, okay, you're going to live in Monmouth and Ocean, but here's kind of what you'll enjoy in those counties and the softer side of life. And then if you do want access to the New York AC, here's kind of where you're going to pinpoint yourself for that. Like, how do you navigate that conversation?
Yeah, it's actually very similar to your demographics. In our area, you get the mixture of a lot of beautiful county parks and state parks by me. So you want to go walk your dog, there's plenty of that to do. But then you also you want to go out to a nice dinner. Atlantic City is like 45 minutes away, straight down the parkway. Or if you want to go to New York City and you go at the right time, you can get there in an hour and 15 minutes, or you could pop on public transportation and get there faster. But it's very much so similar. We have Giant Stadium over here. That's not that far either. Yankee games, people like to go do that as well. So everything's really accessible. And I like to consider like our market is like this bubble of, where everything else in the world is changing. Our real estate market is staying so strong because we are close to the Jersey Shore, Atlantic City, New York City. Then you even have Philadelphia. For some people who love Philly, it's really not that far to go, hour and a half, get a hotel and enjoy a night out and try a new venue, a new spot to eat. So we have a lot to offer here. And I think that's why a lot of people can sometimes leave the Jersey state, but then inevitably I have a lot of my clients come back, and that's a beautiful thing.
Well, I talk about this all the time when you talk about the different areas of the country in real estate. And anybody who's watching this has probably heard the news talk about Florida, talk about California house building, talk about all this stuff. And it's very doomsday because that's just the way media presents a lot of things. And it's not that it's untrue. It's just that if you were to take that sentiment and bring it home with you to this area of the country without doing your research, you may have a very misaligned expectation of what's actually happening in real estate in total and here. And the areas that I find that have these big swings, their value chart only hits on a couple things. Whereas in this area of the country, especially this kind of this link that we have between kind of the central eastern shore areas versus the southwestern Jersey areas, we have access to major cities, New York, Philly, AC, all right there. We do still have big open public spaces and parks through kind of the center of the state away from the coast a little bit. We have the vacation areas of the Jersey Shore. You can get up to New York City and all the things that are on the periphery of that too. You have the Brooklyns and you have all the other stuff there. And then on the South Jersey, we do have the sports teams, you have everything. So we have a value chart that is 10 to 15 to 25 items long. And so as difficulty enters and ebbs and flows in the real estate conversation, that may shrink, but it's still 10 to 15 strong. Whereas you go to an area that only had 2 or 3 values, if those go, there's no more value there anymore. And that's when you're going to get the huge drops in prices, especially like in Florida. Like, if you're in Miami and South Beach, that's great. But you go an hour north or south and you get into some more open areas where they're building a ton of new homes, but then things go a little awry. You get an insurance issue, and now these become way less attractive. The value chart drops very quickly on those. And so you're going to have those big swings. So I agree with you, whether it be the ocean in Monmouth County, you have that blend of what you have city-wise, shore-wise, while still having that internal suburbia and parks. And same thing here. We just look at it at a different side. We're kind of always looking west, where you guys are kind of looking east and north to the cities that way. So I think that's kind of a big difference between the two. Let's finish up here because you had mentioned stadiums. I don't want to put you in an awkward spot, but who do you affiliate with? In those areas, I guess, and it's not necessarily you, but like, who do a lot of people there like? Is it Yankees country? Is it Jets country? Is it the Mets? Like, what are kind of the predominant sports teams that you're dealing with, in that area? the state.
Well, if you're asking me personally, I'm a Giants and Yankee fan. But, there is a little bit of a blend of Philadelphia lovers over here, as well as those who root for the same teams I do. I guess it just depends on what part of New Jersey they were raised in. But I would say if you go to a bar, a majority of those people are going to be rooting for the Giants and Yankees and, Rangers and Devils and those sports teams. So that's a really good question.
Well, the Jersey Shore, right? I mean, when you look at the people who own those secondary houses, it's going to be people from the Philly area, from the New York area, even sometimes from the Maryland area going up this way. So you're kind of drawing in. So it makes sense that you'll have a little bit of a blend. But yeah, I mean, Burlington, Camden, Gloucester County, we are heavy Eagles country. We are heavy Phillies country, Flyers country. That's the Sixers. Like it's very much that. We get the sporadic Yankees fan here or there, but I can't say that I see a lot of them rocking it with pride down here and going all out that way. So even though we're only, an hour and a half away from each other, those affiliations are quite different where, you go to some areas of the country and it's like you could take a 8-hour radius and you're all pretty much in the same sports venue. So the fact that we have so many sports teams to choose from kind of between the two things, I think makes it really nice. And you have this like these little sibling rivalries almost with some of your other areas. And especially down the shore, you get the one house flying the Yankees flag, you get another house flying the Phillies flag and things like that. So I think the diversity too is good. You have multiple choices for who you want your fandom to be, because let's be honest, a lot of this area is professional sports, right? We don't have a huge college sports, mecca in this area, right? Some areas of the South and the Midwest, it's all college football, right? And it's all college sports. Whereas here, I mean, in Philly, we got Drexel, we have UPenn, we have some of those. And then in New York, you obviously, you have NYU, you have some of the colleges up there. But are you the guys the same where like college sports is not the dominating conversation of your areas? It's professional sports, right?
Yeah, it's not at all. Unless you went to Rutgers and you're a big Rutgers fan, that's pretty much the only college school around here that sports are being talked about. But predominantly, it's the professional sports. You're absolutely right.
I found a huge difference when I went out to college and chatting with a bunch of people around the country because they were all like, "Oh, we're going to the college. What's going on with Clemson? What's going on with NC?" And I was like, "Guys, I have no idea. I know what's happening with the Eagles. I have to use my Odyssey app to still like listen to some of that stuff from back home." But all right, Carolyn. Well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. So I think this was a good first dive into trying just to do a basic explanation of sort of what these different areas are going to cover. I think if you are someone who's in New Jersey considering where you're going to want to go, consider all the things that we talked about, the job locations, what you're going to do with that, how that family lifestyle is going to go. Is it going to be more of a school district derived search, or is it going to be more of just a general area search? Are you going to be looking for kind of that down the shore feel, or do you want something that's a little bit more central, that's going to be more in the Philly market and things like that? And I think the point that we get to is, while there are a lot of differences, there is also a ton of similarities. The style of inventory we have is very similar. A lot of the ways that you operate is going to be very similar. The culture of a lot of the people, while there will be a New York to Philly kind of difference, kind of suburbs versus city feel, you'll have some difference there. But by and large, I think there's more similarities than there are differences, which I don't want to say that like makes me happy or sad. It just is what it is. But I think you'll be able to find what you like in each. So any final notes or any kind of final thoughts as you just think about these differences? Because, as residents of New Jersey, we think about this in our personal lives a lot, just in the general differences of how the state operates. And then we add this real estate layer to it. So what's just kind of maybe your final thoughts on, as you talk to people about these differences, where do you find maybe the conversation ends up the most?
I think it's really about affordability. And there are just also some people who can't live without the beach and that really want to be close to the beach. They want to smell the salt water, feel the sand in their toes, hear the waves. They want all of that, and they're not willing to compromise. But for the person that, is okay without living with the beach, there's a lot of different places that they can go in New Jersey that are wonderful. And like we said, your area versus my area, they have a lot of great things. I think the biggest separating factor is just going to be the beach life, if they want that or they don't want that. But I love New Jersey, and I think it's a great space where we're working in and living in, and anybody would be lucky to live here.
I agree. And we'll finish with this. Look, if you're ever looking for some things closer to the Philly area, I'm happy to be your guide. Do your research, but if you have any questions, let me know. And you said it great. What were the exits up the Parkway that you bookend yourself through? I feel like that's such a good way to explain kind of where you cover.
Yeah, I love that. So the southernmost part of Ocean County is going to be around exit 63. And then the northernmost part of Monmouth County is going to be around exit 120. So that's pretty much where I cover along the Garden State.
Awesome. Well, we will make sure we put both of our contact information in the description below for everybody, but I want to thank everybody for hopping on and learning a little bit from us, and look forward to catching up with you next time. See ya.